Wind sighed low over the mesa as dusk bled across the sky, brushing pink over the stone bluffs beyond Carter's ranch. He stood by the fence, one hand resting on the worn rail, the other holding enamel tin coffee gone cold. Biscuit sat beside him, tail thumping once as if to remind him he wasn't alone. The surveyor flags flapped like warnings in the dirt, thin slivers of red cutting through grass and dust. They had multiplied overnight. Carter squinted toward the ridge, thought he saw a figure there. Just shadows, or maybe memories. He hadn't slept well. Dreams had taken him back to Antietam, all smoke and screaming and the ache of Caroline's arms, back before the world had soured on him. Now, in 1883, the scars were hidden, but they whispered like the wind up there on Whiskey's Edge. Micah came riding in from town, hat slanted, blood dried into one sleeve from the fight with Mercer's men 2 days before. The boy dismounted, limping slightly. "You saw them flags?" he asked. Carter gave a slow nod, eyes still on the ridge. "Ellie says Mercer's throwing a celebration at the Copper Spur. Claims he's brought progress to Whiskey Ridge. You call that progress?" Carter grunted, taking a slow draw from his tin. "Poison troughs and cracked ribs?" Micah stood awkward a moment, then said, "Folks are scared. Ellie ain't, though," she said. "She said you ain't gonna let 'em take this place." Silence fell between them like twilight. Finally, Carter spoke. "You know what they used to say in Caroline's church? When night gathers fastest, even a flicker can shame the dark." Biscuit barked once, breaking the spell. Carter looked at the boy. "You still got your rifle?" Micah brightened. "Cleaned and sighted this morning. Get it ready. We might need our flickers come dawn." Later, inside the house, Carter climbed to the attic. Dust whispered under his boots as he opened a chest he hadn't touched in years. Her journal sat on top, leather worn soft, pages cracked at the corners. He opened to the last entry. "Forgive the world, Carr." His hand settled on the spine of the book. Then another envelope underneath Hold Homestead claim, ink still legible. And suddenly, in the still hush of the attic, the path rose clear as sunrise. Not just resistance. Proof. They tried to take his land with words. He'd answer with truth and the grit to back it. From somewhere out on the ridge, a coyote howled low, and Carter Briggs leaned into the whisper of war returning. The morning sun cast long, golden blades across the ridge as Carter Briggs saddled up. Dust rose under Biscuit's trailing paws while the chill of dawn clung stubbornly to the rocks. Carter rode out like he did most mornings, sipping iron-brewed coffee from a tin cup, gazed distant where horizon met sky. It was in that horizon he noticed them first men in dark vests, hammering stakes into the earth just past the eastern slope. He set down his cup. By the time he reached them, the clang of me, towel on stone, turned his stomach. 3 strangers stood where no strangers belonged, unfurling rope and unrolling parchment with too much confidence. Their horses weren't local bred sleek, too polished for New Mexico dust. "You lost?" Carter asked. The tallest turned, a waxed mustache cutting low under stalky eyes. "Mornin', name's Riles, survey crew for the Western Iron Line. This here mesa's ready for rail." Carter's fingers curled along his saddle horn. "That's my cattle fence you just pulled down." "Well," Riles said, tapping a rolled-up document against his hand, "according to this deed, this land was purchased fair, signed and filed by a Mr. Levi Mercer." Carter dismounted and took a slow step forward. "That land's been mine since '79. Got a homestead claim to prove it." "Then maybe take it up with Mr. Mercer." Riles replied coolly. He's in town this week, buying lunch, making friends. He wrenched the stake deeper into Carter's land. A final metallic thud. That evening, Carter stood in the back of Ellie Ward's saloon, the crowd noisy with Mercer's silver coins. The stranger laughed loud, tipping back whiskey, charming folks with stories of steel and progress. Well-dressed but cold-eyed, Mercer made promises with a smile and threats with a shrug. Carter approached. "Levi Mercer," he said, quiet yet sharp. Mercer didn't turn, just sipped his drink. "Ah, you're the fellow with the red barn and broken fences. Mine before you ever stepped foot here was..." Mercer nodded. "You'll find the law has shifted?" "Not all law is made in ink," Carter said, jaw tight. Mercer finally faced him. "Correct. Some's made in grit and powder. Care to test it?" The saloon went still. Ellie's hand hovered below the bar. "I'm warning you," Carter said, voice low. "Stay off my land," Mercer smirked. "You just did." He tipped his hat, turned to the crowd, and called for another round. Carter left without a word, the whisper of iron flags echoing behind him as hollow deeds tried carving new lines through old ground. Dust curled around Carter Briggs's boots as he stood at the edge of his land, the hinge gate swinging open beside him like a slow metronome. A bright red surveyor flag fluttered from a post driven clean into the center of his corral like a splinter in skin. A stranger in a canvas coat tilted his hat back as he hammered another stake. "This here's railroad land now, friend. Just following orders." Carter didn't speak. Not at first. He just looked. Long enough to make the younger man shift his weight and glance toward his waiting companions, 3 others on horses, silhouettes against the boiling sun. Finally, Carter stepped forward, voice low but clear. "Take those flags with you when you go, because I'm not moving." The surveyor sniffed. "Listen, mister." Carter didn't raise a hand. He didn't need to. His presence alone, lean but iron-backed, made the man stop short. Carter had that war-weathered stillness like a storm thaw. Tea had passed and left gravel in its wake. By evening, word had spread clear through Whiskey Ridge. The railroad was staking Carter's land. Folks muttered around Ellie's saloon, eyes flicking to the door every time it creaked open. Outlaws they could handle, but papers and claims, that was a new kind of fight. Deputy Saul found Carter that night, lantern swinging as he stepped onto the porch. Biscuit bounded up, growling low, but eased when Carter gave a nod. "They've got documents, stamped, signed. You'll get a hearing," Saul said, voice tight beneath his mustache. Carter took a slow pull of bitter black coffee. "And who do I hear it from? Mercer? Some judge who's never sweat a day in this dust? This ain't worth dying over, Carter grunted. "It's worth living for." Next morning, the fence was down, water troughs emptied. Micah found hoof prints circling the herd, and a bullet lodged in a tree by the barn. "They're testing you," Ellie said that night, stepping through the doorway with a half-empty whiskey bottle in one hand, "trying to see what line you'll bend to." Carter ran a hand over his face, weariness folded into every wrinkle. "They'll find out I don't bend." Ellie studied him. "But will you break?" Carter didn't answer. Instead, he looked toward the mesa's rim beyond the ranch-wide and gold in the setting sun. His land, his bones buried in it, figuratively, if not yet literally. He stood. They can come, put their stakes in, throw their papers around, but I'll be right here. Same boots, same dirt. They'll move the mountain before they move me. And when he said it, Ellie believed him. The morning came slow. A hush settled like a funeral shroud over Whiskey Ridge. Gray light touched the mesa edges, smearing over cracked adobe walls and weathered porches like ash across stone. Carter Briggs stood alone just outside his barn, brushing dust from the brim of his hat as he scanned the sleepy town from a distance. Micah had taken position in the bell tower before dawn, rifle across his knees, hands trembling though he tried not to show it. Carter lit a match on his boot heel and touched it to a cigar stub, the smoke curling up in the still air. He didn't expect nerves anymore. Not after all he'd seen during the war, but this was different. This was home. Behind him, hoofbeats stirred the ground, soft and careful. Ellie rode up on her dun mare, her skirts tucked high, shotgun across her lap. "Town's ready," she said, dismounting. "At least as ready as we're gonna get." Carter offered her a hard look softened by something deeper. "Appreciate you riding by. I'd figure you'd say that. Still didn't want you facing whatever's coming without someone making sure you remembered you're not alone." Carter nodded, turning back to the ridge. Dust lines began curling in the distance, sunlight catching gunmetal glints. 6 riders, Mercer at the head. They came slow. Confidence or calculation? Carter tipped his head slight. Lie. A silent cue. The bell tower let out one low clang, sharp as judgment. Gunfire answered. From behind barrels and rooftops, townsfolk rose and returned fire. Bullets cracked into wooden posts and stone steps. Carter moved like a storm in boots, taking down 2 riders before they reached the well. One man tried to flank him along the corral, fell hard with a cry as Ellie's shotgun barked from the saloon balcony. In the chaos, dust bloomed, thick with gun smoke and echoing shouts. Biscuit barked wildly from beneath a wagon, limping between shadows. Micah froze when a rider charged toward Carter's blind side, but something flared in him. He squeezed the trigger. The shot rang true. The outlaw fell yards away from Carter, gun still raised. When silence came, it was sudden and full. 6 men lay scattered or bound. Deputy Saul wrestled the last outlaw to the dirt, face bloodied but alive. Carter stepped from the smoke, revolver still warm, his eyes fixed on Levi Mercer, sprawled in the dust. "You want to finish it?" Mercer spat, coughing grit. "No," Carter said, voice low but clear. "But I aim to end it." He tossed the rusted shackles to Saul, then holstered his weapon. Out on the mesa edge, the wind rose again, picking up the dust, carrying it high into the rising sun. The sun hung low over Whiskey Ridge, casting long, burnt orange spears of light across Carter's porch. He sat hunched over, jaw tight, eyes shaded beneath the brim of his hat. In the distance, Micah coaxed a limping calf into the pen, the boy's face bruised and swollen from yesterday's beating. Carter's knuckles tightened around the chipped tin mug of coffee in his hands. The bitter brew long gone cold. A low growl rumbled beside him. Biscuit, alert and watching, ears twitching as if he, too, felt the weight of failing to protect what mattered. Carter stood slowly, the stiffness in his leg from an old war wound making him wince. That scar used to remind him of survival. Now, it felt more like failure. The saloon doors creaked as Ellie brushed through them, catching Carter's silhouette pacing slow, grave-like circles near the hitching post. She had loosened her usual braid, and the dim whiskey light behind her framed her in gold. "You gonna keep letting 'em walk all over this place while you brood under a mesquite tree?" she asked, her voice like sandstone in places, but steady. Carter turned. "Ain't about me. Town don't want a war." Ellie stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "No, they don't, but they don't want to live scared neither. Mercer's bluffing. He's betting on you keeping quiet. He beat a boy near to death. Carter said, his voice cracked halfway through. Then why are you still standing here? She asked, softer now. He looked off into the horizon, where dusk bled into navy, knowing she didn't deserve an empty answer. Because last time I fought for land, I lost it all. Her too. Ellie drew a slow breath and laid a hand gently on his arm. Caroline Wood, I didn't want you to fold in on yourself like this. I knew both of you. You weren't just a soldier, Carter. You were her promise that the world could be kinder than it was. For a moment, silence held them fast. Then Ellie pulled away, eyes glinting with something equal parts sorrow and fire. Don't make me bury another good soul who waited too long to fight for what was theirs. Carter stood there long after she left, wind tugging at his coat and memories pushing into his chest like a knife. He walked into the darkened ranch house and opened the attic door. Dust floated like ghosts in the loft air, and lying beneath a folded wool quilt, he found Caroline's journal, her voice whispering across time. By candlelight, Carter read her words, and something inside him stirred not rage, but a stubborn love still alive beneath the grit. The attic was thick with dust, and silent as a church pew. Carter cracked open the old trunk with a grunt, brittle hinges groaning like tired bones. Sunlight angled through the cracked window, dancing across yellowed papers, a rusted revolver, and a stack of folded linens that still held his late wife's lavender scent, barely. His fingers trembled as he reached for the journal Caroline's. It was wrapped in a ribbon, frayed from age. The leather cover was cracked but intact, and when he opened it, her handwriting swept across the page like wind in tall grass elegant, steady, full of the life he hadn't felt since burying her under the cottonwood tree out back. He read slowly, heart-clenching word by word. Don't let the war be the thing that finishes you, Carr. You gave it enough. I want to believe there's warmth left in you, some small fire you save for the world, long after it's gone cold. Page after page, she wrote of hope, of morning coffee on the porch and how she used to watch him from the kitchen window, thinking how someone so battle-worn could show kindness to a stray dog or a wayward child. Her final entry stopped him cold. Forgive the world, Carr. Just once. Give it a little more of the man I loved. Carter sat back slowly, running his thumb over the ink like touching her words might conjure her beside him. He looked up and around the empty attic, the ghost-quiet house, the land outside he had buried himself in like a grave with a view. And then, as he shifted the journal aside, a folder slid from beneath the trunk. Yellowed parchment, stamped and notarized, his original homestead claim with a date that undercut Mercer's forged deed by 3 full years. He stared at it, blinking once, then twice. Then he laughed not a joyful laugh, but one thick with disbelief and sudden purpose. Well, Caroline, he muttered, voice rough, you always said I had a stubborn kind of luck. A new kind of fire lit in his chest. Not rage, not revenge, something older, something steadier. He stood, brushing the dust from his coat, and tucked the journal inside. As he walked down the stairs, Carter Briggs wasn't the same man. He hadn't been whole in years, but in that moment, he felt something return. Tomorrow, he'd ride. Not to bend the world, but to remind it that some men don't fold just because time's moved on. Some men hold. Dawn broke over Whiskey Ridge, painting the sky in streaks of amber and red. The desert air held its breath. From the church bell tower, Micah peered through a rifle scope, sweat lining his forehead despite the chill. Carter stood in the dusty main road, hat brim low, boots sunk in grit waiting. Ellie slid shells into her father's old shotgun behind the saloon's window shutters. Deputy Saul checked the roadblock once more, palms trembling before he gripped his pistol tighter. The townsfolk were quiet behind crates, barrels, and haystacks, dozen lives ready to fight for what little they had. Then hooves, 6 of them. Mercer led the charge, silver waistcoat gleaming, vulture-like on a black stallion. His riders fanned out, sneers on their faces, pistols at their sides. He pulled up 30 yards out, mockingly tipping his hat. "Last chance," he called. "Hand over the land and I'll let your chickens stay in the coop." Carter didn't move. "You're standing on stolen ground." Mercer smiled, cold and sharp. "I've got 6 guns to your handful of pitchforks. What have you got, rancher?" The bell rang. Gunfire cracked across the ridge. Micah's first shot slammed into a rider's shoulder, spinning him from the saddle. Ellie fired from the saloon, dropping another attacker in the dust. Townsfolk emerged, bold behind their makeshift defenses, loosing shot after shot. Carter advanced with grim calm, felling 2 of Mercer's men with precise, deliberate fire. A third came at him from behind, but Micah saw it, steadied himself, and pulled the trigger. The rider tumbled into the dirt, lifeless. Near the church, Deputy Saul wrestled a gunman to the ground, metal scraping bone until the man yielded. Another outlaw fled but tripped a wire trap, tangling in barbed rope until town hands descended. Mercer turned to flee, but Carter's voice pinned him. "You run, I shoot you square in the spine." Mercer halted, turning slowly. His pistol dropped into the sand. "This land's mine," he snarled. "The law's gonna say." Carter stepped forward, gun leveled. "I am the law today." A beat. Then, slowly, Carter lowered the revolver. "I won't make you a martyr. You'll rot, same as your lies." He nodded to Saul, who cuffed the squirming fraud. In the silence that followed, dust settled like ash. The ridge stood still. Townsfolk emerged, blinking at the sun and at each other. They had stood, and they had won. Carter glanced at Micah, pride soft in his eyes. "Good shot, kid." From the saloon, Ellie stepped out, shotgun resting on her shoulder. "Didn't think we had it in us." Carter smiled, a rare thing. "Guess we make more than cattle and coffee out here." The wind carried the scent of sagebrush. The stand was over, but a stronger Whiskey Ridge remained. A cold hush blah blanketed Whiskey Ridge in the last hour before dawn. The air was leaden, every breeze charged with what was coming. Carter stood at the crest of the mesa, long coat stirring in the wind, gaze fixed eastward. The horizon was a bruise of indigo, bleeding into rust. Sunrise wasn't far now. He tightened the cinch on his saddle. Biscuit sitting silently nearby. The only sound the slow creak of leather and the distant creak of timber from the awning of Ellie's saloon. Below, the townsfolk moved like shadows. Micah climbing into the bell tower, shotgun slung across his back, shaken but focused. Ellie stood at the saloon window, fingers tracing the rim of a pistol. Saul King watched the trail leading into town, jaw clenched hard enough to crack bone. The moment came. Hooves, dust, 6 riders, Mercer at the front, silver vest glinting even in half light. His men flanked him, all rifles and brimstone, spines stiff with bravado. As they neared the open main street, all movement in the town ceased. "I'll give you one chance," Mercer shouted, voice slicing the quiet. "Clear out and maybe I won't raise this heap." Silence answered him. Then, clang. The bell rang. Once, measured, gunfire exploded. The rooftop cracked from Micah's first shot dead center on Mercer's cocky left-hand man. The outlaw pitched sideways, never touching the ground whole. Ellie's bullet shattered the window next to her, catching a second man trying to light a torch. Townsfolk fired from doorways, from rooftops, from behind barrels. Carter emerged last, calm and deliberate. His first 2 shots found their marks without waste. One outlaw dropped near the well. Another reeled back, leg shattered, crawling toward cover before Saul tackled him in a shower of dust and fists. One of Mercer's last men broke left-making for the back of the church, but Micah breathed steady and squeezed the trigger just like Carter had taught him. The horse threw its rider, and the rifle clattered. Mercer alone remained, drawing his pistol and backing into the shadow of the livery. Carter strode forward, revolver drawn, dirt crunching underfoot. "You made your choice," Carter said. Mercer snarled. "Do it, cowboy!" But Carter didn't raise the weapon. He stepped close, stared deep into the man's pride and fear. Not today. He disarmed Mercer cleanly, spun him toward Saul, who grabbed the cuffs. As the sun finally reached over the ridge, painting the town gold, the gun smoke drifted away, leaving peace, at long last, made by those who chose to stay and fight. The dust had barely settled on Whiskey Ridge's main street, but the morning sun seemed to shine different, warmer, clearer, as if the mesa had taken a long breath and finally exhaled. Carter Briggs stood atop the ridgeline, overlooking the town below, his coffee tin warm in his calloused hand. Biscuit paced beside him, limping through the tufts of brush but nose up, ears alert. Carter's eyes tracked the railroad flags that once dotted the soil now yank, Ed, coiled in bundles and waiting to be sent back with the men who'd brought them. Behind him, the wind hummed low over the hills, singing to the shadows that used to cling to his past. Back in town, the saloon's front windows gleamed, newly patched, and Ellie Ward was already pouring coffee for the blacksmith's wife. Laughter, low and real, spilled from the saloon onto the sunlit porch. Inside, something resembling life was thriving, not the frantic scramble of survival, but the rooted comfort of belonging. Across the street, Micah hammered fresh rails along the north pasture's fencing, sleeves rolled up, his voice cracking into manhood as he teased another boy helping drag lumber. Deputy Saul Kingslight, limp in his, step-tipped his hat to Carter from the jail steps. Inside, Levi Mercer waited out the dust and truth, stripped of silver and silk, just another outlaw waiting his turn behind bars. Carter descended slow, boots pressing into the sand with a new ease. When he reached the saloon, Ellie was already waiting, 2 coffee cups in hand. No words needed saying. The silence between them had turned from hollow to full shared, rather than avoided. They sat on the porch's edge, heels dangling above the dirt. "You think there's such a thing as peace in a place like this?" Ellie asked, eyes on the horizon. Carter took a sip. "I think peace don't come find you. I think you build it. One morning, one fence post, one good choice at a time." She nodded, setting her cup down. "Then it's a hell of a start." Behind them, the church bell tolled not for war, not for warning, just to say the day had begun. Somewhere deep beneath the mesa, roots held firm in thirsty soil. And above, the sun rose over a ridge that belonged, finally, to its people.